Come closer, 'cause I want to tell you something most people take a lifetime to figure out, and by then it is often too late. I am 106 years old, and everywhere I go, people look at me as if I hold the map to hidden treasure. They pull on my sleeve and ask, "Sal, what is the secret? How do you live this long? How do you manage to smile like that?" They look at my skin, they look at my energy, and they assume the answer lies in a specific diet or a magic pill. They think I am going to tell them the secret to a happy life is drinking enough wine or consuming the best olive oil. I do those things certainly, and I enjoy them, but that is not the secret. If happiness were just about what we eat or drink, the grocery store would sell it in bottles. The truth is much simpler and much harder. The secret is this: happiness is a choice you must make every single day. Most people do not understand this. They live their lives in a state of passive waiting. They believe that happiness is a result, a prize that life awards you when everything aligns perfectly. They wait for the right job to come along. They wait to meet the perfect person. They wait for their bank accounts to look a certain way, or they wait for the right time to start living. I have watched so many people die while they were still waiting for life to begin. They spend their years looking for joy on the horizon, never realizing that joy is not something you find. It is something you create. I did not wait. I decided. I made the conscious decision to choose joy, and that is why I am still here, and that is why I am happy. You might look at me and think, "Well, Sal, maybe you had an easy life. Maybe it is easy to choose joy when you have not suffered." If you think that, you are wrong. My philosophy was not born in comfort. It was forged in fire and blood. I know what it means to lose everything. I know what it looks like when your world collapses. My first memory of deep pain was when I was only 5 years old. My mother contracted tuberculosis, a terrible disease that stole her breath and her life. I can still see the image in my mind, vivid and painful, of her coughing blood. She died, and my father and I were left behind. We came to America with nothing, starting over from scratch, with empty hands and heavy hearts. My childhood was not filled with toys and games. By the time I was 10 years old, I was working. I worked making shoes, laboring for hours until my fingers physically bled from the strain. I learned early on that life does not hand you anything. You have to work for it. But physical pain is easy to recover from compared to the pain of the heart. The greatest tragedy of my life happened when I was 31 years old. I had found love with a woman named Anna Maria. She was everything to me. Her voice was like music, and she brought light into my world. We had a life together, and we had 2 small children. Then, in an instant, she was gone. She died suddenly from a brain aneurysm. She fell and was gone before she even hit the ground. I was left alone with 2 babies, devastated, and if that was not enough, years later, when I was 58, another disaster struck. I had spent 26 years building my business, my livelihood, and in one night, a fire took it all. I watched my hard work turn to ash. So when I tell you about happiness, I am not speaking as a man who has lived in a bubble. I am speaking as a man who has stood in the ruins of his own life. But from these tragedies, I learned the most important lesson, one I want you to write down. Hard times don't have to make you hard. You have to understand that this wisdom did not come to me instantly. I did not wake up the day after my wife died or the day after my business burned down with a smile on my face. That would be a lie, and I don't have time for lies. Truth is, after Anna Maria died, I was lost. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of unfairness. Why her? Why me? Why now? For 6 months, I was not a good man. I was the angriest man in Brooklyn. I carried a rage inside me that was so hot, it burned everyone who tried to get close. I was rude to my neighbors. I was short with my family, and I walked around with a face like stone. I thought that by being hard, I was protecting myself. I thought that if I didn't let anyone in, I couldn't get hurt again. But I was wrong. I wasn't protecting myself. I was destroying what was left of my family. The turning point came from the smallest person in the house. My daughter, just a little girl at the time, came up to me one evening. She had tears in her eyes, and she was shaking. She looked up at me and asked, "Papa, why are you so mad? Did I do something wrong?" That question hit me harder than any physical blow I have ever taken. I looked at this innocent child who had already lost her mother, and I realized she thought my anger was her fault. She thought she was to blame for the darkness in our home. In that moment, my heart broke, but it broke open. I realized I had a decision to make. I could continue to be the angry victim of my circumstances, or I could be a father. I realized I could not be both. I made a vow to myself that night. I decided that I would change. I decided that even if I didn't feel happy inside, I would project joy for my children. I would become the man Anna Maria fell in love with, the man who laughed, the man who sang. It was a fake it till you make it situation, but a miracle happened. As I started to act happy, as I started to look for reasons to smile for my daughter, the joy started to become real. This is what I mean when I say you have the power to choose your attitude. The pain was still there. I missed my wife every single day, but I refused to let the pain define me. I refused to let hard times make me a hard person. Life, however, is long, and it has many chapters. After my children grew up, I found myself alone again. For 40 years I lived as a widower. I was lonely, but I was content with my routine. I thought that the romantic part of my life was finished, a closed book on a dusty shelf. But at age 70, life surprised me again. I met Gloria. She was vibrant, she was kind, and she made me feel 20 years old again. But there was a complication, at least in the eyes of the world. I was an old Italian man, and Gloria was a black woman. We are talking about Brooklyn in 1990. The world was different then, and people's minds were smaller. When we decided to be together, the backlash was immediate. It didn't come from strangers. It came from the people I loved. My own son, my flesh and blood, could not accept it. He stopped talking to me. For 2 years, there was silence between us. Can you imagine the pain of that? After everything I had sacrificed, after raising him alone, to be cut off because of who I chose to love. It would have been easy to give in. It would have been easy to say to Gloria, "I'm sorry, it's too hard. My family opposes this." Most people would have done that. They would have chosen the comfort of approval over the risk of love. But I had already learned my lesson about choices. I knew that I had to live for myself, not for my neighbors, and not even for my children. This leads me to the second great lesson I want to share with you. You must stop caring about what other people think. It is a poison. If you live your life trying to satisfy the opinions of others, you will end up empty. I realized that my son's opinion, while painful, could not physically hurt me. Only I could hurt myself by letting his judgment control my happiness. So I chose Gloria. I chose love. And do you know what happened? We had 33 wonderful years of happiness together. If I had listened to the complaints of my community or the silence of my son, I would have spent those 33 years alone in a cold house. Instead, I spent them holding hands with a woman who loved me. Eventually, my son came around. He saw that I was happy. He saw that Gloria was good to me, and the ice melted. But even if he hadn't, I know I made the right choice. You have to understand that people's opinions are just noise. They don't have to live your life. You do. When you close your door at night, the neighbors aren't there. The critics aren't there. It is just you and your heart. So you better make sure your heart is full of what you want, not what they expect. Now we come to the final, and perhaps the most vital lesson of all. Most people make the terrible mistake of thinking happiness is a destination they will reach later. They wait for the big house, the overflowing bank account, or the perfect retirement. They convince themselves that they will be happy when the conditions are perfect, but the truth is they are dying while they are waiting. This brings me to the third secret. Happiness is not found in the grand achievements of the future, but in the small, seemingly insignificant moments of the present. You must realize that joy is hidden in the things you take for granted. The warmth of a cup of coffee in the morning, the way the sunlight streams through the window, or the sound of your family laughing in the next room. I have learned to treat gratitude not as a feeling that comes and goes, but as a muscle that must be exercised every single day. If you do not use this muscle, it becomes weak and you become blind to the beauty of your own life. Despite losing my mother when I was a child, burying my young wife, and watching my business burn to ash, I do not allow myself to be the saddest man in the world. Instead, every single morning when I open my eyes, before I do anything else, I say, "Thank you, God, for one more day." This is the contrast that defines a happy life. You can walk through the hell of tragedy and still choose to live in the heaven of a grateful attitude. You might think you have time to figure this out later, but you are wrong. I want you to feel the urgency of what I am saying, because you only get one life. Just one. There are no rehearsals, and there are no second chances to live this day again. I am 106 years old, and I know better than anyone that life is finite. But do not feel sorry for me because I am old. Feel sorry for the young people who waste their time being angry or worried about what the neighbors think. You must choose to be happy right now, today, while you still have the breath to do it. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Hard times will come, but they do not have to make you hard. People will judge you, but their opinions cannot hurt you unless you let them. And finally, do not wait for life to be perfect to be happy. Look at me. I have seen blood. I have seen tears, and I have felt the deepest kind of loss. Yet I am still here, and I am still smiling, because I decided that the tragedy of my past would not steal the joy of my present. So please write this down and keep it with you. Happiness is a choice, and so make that choice today.